Hello, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Salutations of all kinds. Welcome to Free Spirit. We are your hosts, Nikki and Jesse, and today we are going to be talking about Good Friday. As you know, Good Friday is on April 15th, next week. And for those who do not know what Good Friday is, it is the day that Jesus Christ was crucified by the Romans. So since Jesse can butcher this story less than I can, I will let him go into it.
Yes. So the significance, right, for the day for many Christians is, the Christian community was that the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, the dying, the meaning behind it, dying for our sins. And you kind of, look up what Good Friday means, and the word good is normally translated as holy or pious. I want to say I think I'm saying that right, pious. And so on this day, there's many traditions, right? There's many ways of recognizing what Jesus has done for us. And some don't eat meat. Some religions don't eat meat because they believe that since Jesus sacrificed his flesh, that they're going to stay away from meats. And then some some eat fish because they don't consider fish as a meat, because fish is like a cold-blooded animal, where meat would be a warm-blooded animal. So it's pretty interesting how how our walks in life, we take different paths, right? But in the end, it's to celebrate what Good Friday was about and what Jesus allowed us, what the gift that he gave us through him. And with that, there's fasting. There's
So is there like a set of rules for Good Friday? Is there like you said, no meat, fasting? Do you know where the fasting comes from? Is that when Jesus was in the desert and he had fasted, or what exactly? Where does that tie in?
Well, there's no like biblical references to say that you must fast on Good Friday. This was just all man created. Like, this was just, there's nothing stating that you should fast on this date. That does talk about fasting, but it doesn't say, hey, on this day you will fast. This was just kind of like people and religions, Christianity, just kind of take it amongst themselves on how they could celebrate that day. Some just don't eat anything, some just drink water. So it just varies on person to person and religion to religion.
So I am going to play kind of like a devil's advocate with this, just because there's certain things that I just don't fully agree with when it comes to all this stuff. So right. Expect that, because I'm just going to be asking some off the wall questions probably on just how I believe everything is and stuff like that. So you're saying that Good Friday, people just kind of do this stuff, but it's not written in the Bible. It's not written down. It's just been something that they kind of adapted to and created. And now everyone just kind of follows that same thing. Now, wouldn't you agree that that's kind of the same thing that they used to do when they used to idolize like men, or what was it, like the sacrifices and stuff like that to the gods? Would you not agree that that's kind of the same man-made, I don't know how to explain it, like man-made culture, I guess?
Well, I don't know. Like, I guess people try to interpret what they think is best based on their walk. And I think it's just more or less what resonates well with what they want to do as far as, Good Friday goes. Because, there's nothing biblically saying that, you should fast on Good Friday. This is just this man-made. And, I guess some people just show it as a sign of, respect to the body, or, just, maybe sacrificing the essentials that they need for their body, just like Jesus sacrificed his body for our sins at the cross. So I think people, and I'm not speaking for everyone, but I think people kind of do these things to try to resonate with Jesus and
Kind of
show.
feel a little bit of his suffering, I'm guessing.
Yeah, like
Okay, I can get behind that. That actually makes a lot of sense.
yeah.
I like I said, I've never been into the Bible. I've never grown up in a church or anything like that. So these questions are just kind of for me personally, and I'm sure other people have these kind of questions. So, like I said, I'm going to kind of play devil's advocate here. But yeah,
No,
that
yeah.
totally makes sense. That people are just trying to be, maybe make themselves closer to Jesus in that way by depleting their body how he was. So that makes sense. I can get behind that.
Yeah, and so and like I said, everyone's walk is different, and just like yours, to mine, to thousands and thousands of Christianity's religions, that celebrate Good Friday. I guess it kind of just resonates with what they feel they need to do to symbolize their appreciation of the day. And what I love about it, there's no wrong or right way. It's just whatever resonates with you. Even like going back, like even some refrain from like any kind of sexual relationships as well. So it just it gets pretty interesting what people sacrifice just to get closer to Jesus that day. And I think that's the beauty of free will, the ability to choose to do what you want and don't want to do. And there's some that do eat meat and continue like any other day, but do celebrate Good Friday and do recognize that what Jesus has done. So it just really depends on the individual.
Yeah, like I wasn't trying to say anything negative about it. It was just I never resonated with that, with a lot of that stuff. Like for me, yeah, I would try not to eat meat and stuff like that, but it was just like my personal preference. I don't know why I didn't. I just didn't feel like eating meat during that time. So but that was just something that was, between me and God. That's kind of what he was telling me, but I never really went into in depth of a lot of this stuff. So like I said, I'm not trying to judge anybody because, whatever you feel, whatever's God's speaking to you, that is completely fine. But it just never did with me. So that's why I'm trying to understand it from the other aspect.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. And thanks for asking the questions. There's plenty of people that have questions, and maybe that question was one of them they had. So definitely ask, because that's the beauty of not knowing. You get to ask, and and I love it, because not everyone's gonna know everything. I mean, I sure as heck don't know everything, and I never will, but I definitely will ask questions when they arise, and maybe get clarity, and then I can make my own discernment on what direction I want to go, and what I want to take. And so but no, thank you for asking.
Sorry, I'll let you get on. Okay, so they fast, and what else do they do?
So they fast is mainly some of the stuff that they do, and then they hold a church service in recognition, because all Good Friday all leads up to Jesus's resurrection, right? His victory over death and sin, which would be on Easter. And I think we're having a podcast for Easter, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, so this is all the events that led up to Easter, when Jesus rose in the dead in 3 days. So, and mainly the event, Good Friday, is just kind of shows the importance of this crucifixion that Jesus made. Was God has sacrificed his only son to take away the sins of the world. The events that led up to the crucifixion were pretty brutal. If have you seen the Passion of the Christ?
I think I did a long time ago, but I haven't seen anything recently, or honestly, I don't really remember.
Yeah, you should watch that. essentially shows, I know it's in all in Aramaic and you have to read subtitles unless you fluent in Aramaic, but I had to read the subtitles. But I mean that movie, I think depicts the events leading to the crucifixion of Jesus being betrayed by Judah, and then Jesus having to basically stand trial for a crime he didn't do. He was purely innocent. So um, it's pretty intense, the floggings and the beating that Jesus had to endure during this whole process that um, was kind of taking the sins of the world upon himself, because the significance of it was that Jesus was the last sacrifice, because back in the I guess let's just say back in the Old Testament, where before Jesus come, the price to pay for sin was blood. We would sacrifice like bulls or lambs and spill their blood to kind of wash away the sin that we may committed, but it was just temporarily. It wasn't everlasting, where Jesus's blood was for the whole world, everlasting. So it was like there was no need to sacrifice any animals after his crucifixion. He was the last lamb for the world, so that way we could be set free through him. And so I thought that was very interesting, that he basically just took on a whole world of sin. It's kind of like, I know you have kids, and I have kids, and it's like, I don't know if I'd want my kids to take the sins of the world on themselves and getting tortured and flogged and beaten.
Yeah, I would definitely sacrifice myself for my children. Absolutely.
Right. And so, this is where God loves us so much that he gave his only son in the sacrifice for us. So that, that's how much he loves us. And some people may see that pretty harsh, but I guess, with strong convictions that God has, he's making a really loud statement here.
So I do agree to a certain point. So, my stance. I just have a lot of issues with the whole story, pretty much from start to finish. And God kind of revealed to me, like, when it comes to this story, that things aren't what they seem. So that's why I don't follow the Bible word for word. And I trust my connection with God. And I know that he is here for me, and what the messages I get from him are divine. So I just kind of have this issue with the whole Good Friday story, from the beginning of the story. So they were in the garden praying, and Judah walked up to him and kissed him and, sold him out. But for me, that's like one of those things that God has revealed to me. Like, that's not how it went, pretty much. And I think we were talking the other day where I had mentioned that, and you said that there was actually a book written from him that was basically confirming my idea. That had, well, not my idea, but what God revealed to me was that, to me, I don't think if you love somebody so much, you would not go up to them and kiss them on the cheek for them to be convicted. So to me, that whole scenario seems like he walked up to Jesus, kissed him, and it was like, I'm sorry, but this is for your own good.
Yeah. So like, the Bible explains that Judah had, sold Jesus out, had went with the Pharisees, and kind of handed Jesus over to the Pharisees to get locked up. And then, later goes on to explaining that, Judah eventually, after everything was done, the crucifixion and all that, Judah had went and, had committed suicide. I think he's just like hanging, he had hung himself, and so I found a book, and it's called The Gospel of Judah. And I don't remember who wrote it, and I was looking for it the other day. We have so many books, I couldn't find it, but it was a really thin book, and it was like the Gospel of Judah, and it was written by Judah's son, and it tells a different story. It says that Judah didn't believe that Jesus was the Messiah. And during, you gotta look at that time frame back then. So if, I walked around saying I was the Messiah, the chosen one, people
would be looking at you crazy.
Well, yeah, but not only how they took it so serious that they would imprison you and kill you. Like that's how essentially what happened to Jesus, right? They took it, pretty serious. Like your life was literally on the line, going around saying, yeah, I'm God's son, and people are like, what, that's blasphemy, and so people took it a little more serious back then, where they're willing to kill you for it. So Judah was, according to this book, was kind of like worried for Jesus. He's like, whoa, hold on. I don't want to see nothing. I don't want to see Jesus to get hurt, from what I was reading. And so he went to the Pharisees and was thinking that he was doing Jesus a favor by turning him in, so that way no harm came to him. That's where you get this famous depiction where Judah came up and kissed him and they arrested him. And then later found out that, Judah later found out that the Pharisees tricked him, because the Pharisees told Judah that, hey, we just want to arrest him and nothing more. When Judah found out that they were going to punish him by death and arrest him and flog him, Judah had got upset. And that's when he went back and threw the money at the Pharisees, telling them to have it, because the Pharisees lied to him. And once everything was all said and done, like, so we're painting a picture up to the crucifixion. Once people realized, these people that were against Jesus, once they realized what they've done, they, just like we've been talking about in our past, in some of our past podcasts. So they knew what they did was wrong. And so they blamed Judah. I'm like, Judah, that's your fault. Judah, you handed us over Jesus. And, so no one took responsibility for the crucifixion. Those that wanted Jesus dead immediately pushed blame to Judah, because Judah gave Jesus up, right? And it kind of makes sense, like, people would do that, because we see that today, where people's own accounts want to blame someone else, and instead of saying, oh, I messed up, and taking ownership, they're like, no, you did, because everyone knows that you brought, just kind of like happened with Judah, like everyone knew that Judah brought him over, so they immediately blamed him for their wrongs. Because I think when Jesus had died, like there was the earth shifted, and the temple that they had, that was it took like 50 years to make, and I think it was like a big veil ripped all the way in half, and like it pretty much cracked in half, the temple, and the veil ripped all the way down, and that's when people knew, like, wow, this was the Son of Man. The Pharisees and the people that had crucified him, they felt bad and pushed blame to Judah. And then Judah fled to some outcasted village or town for people that were unwanted in villages. And that's where this book or Gospel of Judah came from, was from this town that he was in. I forget the name. So that's kind of like a real short synopsis of the book. And so, and some people that are listening might say, hey, it's written in the Bible, it's truth, and then there's some that say, well, kind of like how you're saying, like, it's written by a man, inspired by God. So
exactly. So for me, I feel like the Bible is just so one-sided and just kind of pushed so much to, I don't want to say agenda, but it's just pushed so hard to this one element. But if you're rational, you always know that there's two sides of every story. And for the fact that the followers of Jesus saw Judah do this, instead of going to him and asking him what happened, they were just like, oh, it was his fault. Like, let's just the whole Bible, let's just all blame everything on Judah, instead of, they could have fought for Jesus. They were all standing around. They could have done stuff. Yeah, Jesus said, don't do it, but they contributed to that whole entire scenario. So you can't just be like, oh, everyone's pointing fingers at this one guy who led these people over here. And knowing that God and Jesus are about forgiveness and basically learning from your mistakes, why didn't his followers take him in and, help him repent, help him, overcome? Because he knew what he did was wrong. So why didn't they help him? So this is kind of the stuff that I'm talking about, of like two sides. That's what I think. This is why I don't follow the Bible 100%, because there are two sides to every story. Just like, I had saw something about, there's a woman who's doing some studies about Cyprus, the guy who actually carried out Jesus's crucifixion. And she had found these books stating that he knew what he did was wrong after he did it. So just kind of like when you said everything kind of fell and everything crumbled and cracked, maybe that was his realization of, damn, I messed up. But there's books out there showing that after that incident, he was a believer in Jesus. He followed Jesus. He claimed him, the Son of God, the Messiah, and where no one knows about that stuff. And they actually found Cyprus's ossuary, and in his ossuary there was nails. They believe to be Jesus's nails that he was crucified with. So for me, there's just a lot of evidence out there that kind of shows all aspects of the situation.
I'm pretty sure, that's the key players, viewpoints, right? And imagine everyone else, right? Everyone, just standard bystanders were, just ordinary people were affected by everything. I even read some things about I think Baracus, I think I'm saying it right, it was the criminal who was set free in replace for Jesus. I think it's Baracus, and there's a book on what he went through during that time frame too. So pretty interesting to find some of these lost passages, and why some of these didn't make it into the Bible, because there are some chapters removed from the original Bible. I think like the book of Enoch and the book of Giants. So there's a lot of stuff that was pulled, thousands of years ago for some reason. And I think these were all discovered in, I think, the Dead Sea Scrolls, and it kind of gave a lot of chapters that were originally with the Bible, and who knows why or for what reason things were added and things were removed, so it's very interesting. And I like to keep an open mind on things, and
yeah, this is kind of why I tell people to do their research, just because for me, I like to know the whole story. I don't want to know bits and pieces that people think that I should know. I want to know the whole story. That way I can discern for myself what the whole situation was about, not what somebody's telling me,
Yeah, because people, and it's sad, people have ulterior motives, man-made rules and regulations, and just a lot of unnecessary things just because they're in these positions, and I think when you look at this whole crucifixion, why Jesus was crucified, and this is my opinion, and I could be wrong, and if I'm wrong, please let me know, but my thing was like, we see religion is what killed Jesus, because here we have, and okay, let me define religion. To me, religion is just kind of man-made beliefs and values, and so to me, technically everyone has their own religion because it's whatever resonates with you.
It's tailored to everybody.
Yeah, so that's why I pulled away, because from specific religion. But anyway, so with that, the Pharisees were getting upset with Jesus because he was performing miracles on like holy days, and they're like, "Whoa, who are you to heal people on a holy day that was man-made?" And they're just trying to build a case on him, just to give reason to do what they what they did to Jesus. So and that's how I see it. These man-made rules and just really, some add value and some don't, but for this particular thing, it just really didn't add value. That these Pharisees were upset that Jesus would perform miracles on a Sabbath, on a holy day, right? And then these are God's work. So it's like, hold on, why are you getting upset over something that's man-made? And so it all very interesting to me, the mindset that was back then, and what people in these higher church positions feel threatened, what they'll do when their positions or someone's exposing them, especially if they're doing wrong things, and so there's a lot of corruption, and not all, but when there's people, there's going to be corruption. So it's really hard to really put it all into one person, like a pastor, because it's kind of like you don't want to get deceived, and you don't want to be tricked, and because it just impacts you so bad. But there are good pastors that are of God and seek the light, and are they're in it for the right reasons. So don't be discouraged. And I always tell people just to look it up for yourself, research, and don't let anyone else tell you what's holies of holies. That's kind of like my thing, is just do your research, look up your scriptures, look up the information, and then you make your judgment on it. And it's just safer that way, because that way, I even said, like, I'm kind of going on a tangent, but I attended this church in Utah, and there was a pastor who was preaching in the Bible that it says that you shall not drink, period. And I was like, hold on, and those that know the Bible, Jesus had said, hey,
wrong.
Yeah, Jesus said, yeah, Jesus said, hey, drink, but not to drunkenness. And I forget what passages he says that, but he does make a reference like, hey, you could drink, but not to drunkenness. And when I had, when the sermon was done, I wasn't going to call him out in front of everybody and make a big deal. I waited till everyone left, and I said, hey, I had a question about this particular verse you read, and can you show me where that that particular passage is? Because I said, maybe I'm reading something wrong, and he showed me, and I believe it was in Kings, and the passage was like, to a king, like, hey, you're a king, you shouldn't be drunk in front of your people, and you should lead the way, you should it made sense what the passage was saying to a king. It was saying, hey, you're a king, people look up to you, you shouldn't be drunk in front of them. And so it was interesting that he cherry picked just that sentence. And
so he probably picked it out because it did resonate with him, because it's one of those things, you're a pastor, you should not be drunk, people should not see you that way. So maybe that resonated with him, but now he's projecting that whatever he accepted as his own onto the other people.
Right. Instead of people just making their own decision, and so, like, because some people, and for one, I guess he was a heavy drinker in the past, and some people just don't know.
They bring their personal past into it.
Yeah, like what might work for him is not going to work for another. and some people could just have a drink and know their limits, and some people don't know their limits. As soon as they drink, they just go they go crazy with it. And so maybe for him it was not to drink because he knew that he couldn't control himself, which is totally fine. But I just had issues with him portraying, like, pushing that onto others when I don't think he had the right to cherry pick a passage. He should have read the whole passage and then let people discern what they want to do. And because I did tell him, like, oh, here, I had looked up that passage about Jesus, saying drink, but not to drunkenness. I said, hey, Jesus says this here. And he's like, no, it doesn't. And I said, it's right here. And he's like, oh, well, that was grape juice. I was like, okay, so this is, it was like, all right, I'm wasting my time. And so I said, okay,
juice is wine. It's what it was wine.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's like, I said, I just I was like, okay, I know this is going, and it kind of rubs people the wrong way, because it's like, all right, if you're cherry picking this stuff, what else are you going to be picking apart and not giving the whole message, right? And so not faulting him at all. It's just in his heart, he thought that was his interpretation, and it might have, resonated and worked really well for him. But I'm not him, and neither is anyone else in that congregation, and it was just it seemed like he was force fed, like he was force feeding people and trying to put a guilt trip on people for drinking. And I'm not a big drinker at all, so I'm not saying like, hey, yeah, an advocate for it. I just, because it lowers, me personally, it lowers your state of mind. And I think that's why Jesus says, drink but not to drunkenness. Because when you get drunk, I mean, I don't think I've heard one good story about people being drunk. It's like your state of mind is lowered and the enemy comes in. And that's why people are like, you see where they use it as an excuse, like, oh yeah, I did this because I was drunk. And it's like, well, that's
well,
not
you chose to drink, so
yeah, that's not a good excuse. You knowingly did something, and because I've been in those positions, and I still know what I'm doing. And I know some people may argue that, but I really think people still know what they're doing. They just have a little less conscious about doing certain things, like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do that, but anyways,
yeah. I think no, you're good. So I think that it was a great example of someone putting their personal influences into their teachings. And I think that's why if people ask me for advice, I don't tell them what to do. I just tell them all the knowledge I have around the situation. That way they can better make the decision for themselves. So that's kind of how I go about doing it. I will never tell you, like, you should not do this, or do not do this, or, do this, or this way's better, because, whatever works for me is not going to work for you. So you need to have all the tools around you, all the knowledge that you can about a certain situation, and then it's up to you to make that decision.
Yeah. Cause I'm thinking about when I'm talking to God, and he has never told me, like how you're saying, like, I'm trying to think of a good a good example, but he always gives me the option. It's like, well, you have the option not to do it, then you have the option to do it. Okay. And he's like, so if you do it, this is what's going to happen. If you don't do it, this is what's going to happen. So he's always giving me the choice to let me determine what direction I want to go. So it was never like, you need to go, it wasn't really like directed in a manner to which I had no opinion in it. It was just like, all right, here's the good response, here's a bad response, and either way you take, I still love you. And that was the message, right? And I'm like, wow, like, here he is telling me, like, all right, there's consequences for each. You make your decision and I will be with you. And you might make a bad decision. I hope people don't, take the bad decision, but sometimes we do. and there's consequences, and it just takes longer to get to your destination than if you were to take the good decision, less drama, et cetera, and then you get to your destination faster. So really, really, really interesting. And that's how I portray God. It's like, here's what he hates and here what he loves. So you make your decision. The 10 Commandments, that's an easy one. Proverbs 6:16 shows us the 7 things that God doesn't like, right? Like pride, lying. And so it's just kind of interesting. These are the things that some of us still do. God doesn't love you any less for it. He just says, hey, here are your options, like I was saying earlier, and you could go and take the road that is solid, or you could take the ocean in which is wavy. You're just going nowhere, just up and down, up and down. So it's like, what do you want to do? I still love you, by the way, whether you take the ocean that is wavy or the land that's solid.
All right. So we are getting past our time. So since we just got completely off of topic of Good Friday and kind of went on a little tangent, we will have to end this episode at this time, and join us for part 2 of this episode, where we actually go into Good Friday and why I believe that Jesus was an actual person and some scientific reasoning behind that.
All right. Yeah. We kind of, all this stuff is interesting on the events that led up to Good Friday. And we kind of just strayed off a little, but I think it's important because that, these were just questions that we had, and we're kind of just sharing our opinions with one another. And I think that's the beauty of coming together and, just talking this stuff out and getting clarity from both sides, and if not all sides of the fence, just kind of like, hey, this is what I believe, this is what I don't believe. And that's the beauty of coming together, because not everyone's going to agree. Not everyone is, there's going to be disagreements, so, but anyways, yeah, I guess we'll have to make a part 2 to be continued.
Join us for part 2.